Um, Welcome to me sitting here. Um, Last time I was recording, I was recording the live feed that everyone was getting on Twitter of people being announced to be released by WWE for budget cuts, is what we were told. Budget cuts was the excuse given. And I think a lot of fans aren't really buying it. And it makes sense, because you shouldn't buy it. It's absolute crap. And if you tell me it's not crap, then, man, you just need to wisen the fuck up. So what happened on a day which is currently being described as Black Wednesday in the wrestling community? Over 20 wrestlers were cut from WWE, not furloughed, they were fired, and including producers, writers, and a load of boardroom staff back at the WWE headquarters. It's estimated that WWE are going to be removing around 40% of their entirety when it comes to staff. 40% of a global organization is a lot of people. I don't need to tell you that. And I know a lot of people are going to say that a couple hundred people, a grand scheme of things, there's more companies that are laying off more people, but those are incredibly different situations, and I'll explain why. A lot of these places you'll see, letting people go, restaurants, clothing shops, just general places that you see shutting down every day. Most of these companies are in debt, right? And they're slowly paying off debts with the monthly income or revenue of whatever they may be doing. That's usually how businesses begin. It's very rare that it's a billionaire or a millionaire that starts it up. Sometimes it's just a couple of guys willing to take a huge financial gamble and then do it. And then obviously, you get your administration and bankruptcy and all your different things that you can file for. So in those cases, it's very understandable why people get laid off. If there's no money, then obviously you can't keep paying people, or at least pretend you're going to pay people. So the only thing to do is to lay them off. But WWE, multi-billion-dollar company, cash reserves of over 500 million, currently making a profit during this period, and I'll explain why. Because the ratings and crowd attendances are so poor for the WWE, it was actually costing them money to run their live show schedule and do all these events. And obviously the massive amount of travel expenses you get from having a roster the size they have. Well, most of the roster have to cover their own expenses, but there's a degree of organization and the transportation of the gear to set up Raw and SmackDown in all these different places across the country. So the television revenue is the main thing with WWE, and because they have somehow managed to bribe Florida State and the President of the United States to allow them to continue to film live television, they will continue to get that revenue. So, and the revenue that they get from the live television was putting WWE in a financial state that they have never been at before, in a good way for them. They were absolutely minted. They are absolutely minted, mainly because of this Fox deal. The Fox deal probably the biggest part of this. So they've got this massive deal with Fox. They will have a big deal with the USA Network for Raw as well. NXT, I'm not sure what the deal with that is. I'm pretty sure that it's only on USA because because they made an agreement to have extra content for free. I'm fairly sure that's what the negotiation was. But the bottom line that I'm trying to make is that WWE isn't in administration. They are as far from bankruptcy as anyone else right now, other than your companies like Amazon and multi-billion dollar conglomerates or companies, are probably the only companies in a financially more secure place than WWE. So WWE, right, are coasting. They're doing more than coasting. They are profiting, even given the current crisis, which is kind of sickening in itself, to be honest, when you think about it. But regardless, I digress. They're making money, right? So do not put the argument to me that no one should be upset by the WWE firings because everyone else is. As I've just explained briefly, I could go into numbers and stuff, but to be honest, you don't need to. Because as soon as as soon as it was known what the cash reserves were, as soon as it was known that there was going to be the quarterly profit meeting, which is coming up very soon for WWE, it became very apparent that this is just Vince McMahon and WWE saving as many pennies as possible. Maybe it makes sense. You could argue we don't know when this is going to end, so maybe that huge cash reserve has to last them a long time. And that is the only argument that you could have. But even then, I have something to completely swipe that off the table. Brock Lesnar gets paid $12 million a year. John Cena, your Goldbergs, they make millions per appearance. You've got Cain Velasquez on a several $million contract. He's not even a wrestler. He's done some wrestling, but he's not a very good wrestler. And he's aging, let's be honest. Ronda Rousey, same deal. And these people have been kept. So these guys who are on the millions of dollars offer, right? Which, let's face it, you get rid of those guys, there's your, saving money. But no, they've decided to axe a lot of the talent that makes their top talent look good because they allow themselves to be bent over and royally screwed. Basically, the people they've let go are wrestlers, which is a term that WWE and their fans at this point don't like to use when describing their talent. They're superstars. They're superstars in sports entertainment. They are not pro wrestlers. Well, the guys that have just been released are pro wrestlers. And the girls. These are the guys and girls that make the WWE their money. That have helped them get to where they are. No one can tell me that there is a justifiable reason for why Zack Ryder, seasoned veteran, he's only 34, he's a 14-year vet already, and he's only 34, which means by the time he's Christopher Daniels' age, he's going to have 30 years in the business. Right? Just think about that for a moment. This is how valuable an asset Zack Ryder is. Doesn't usually injure people, usually gets injured, but that because he was put in stupid matches where he was always going to get injured. So they release him, the broski, the internet champion, the first guy, I believe, to hit 1 million followers. I'm not sure if that was YouTube or Twitter or however that worked. But Zack Ryder was a huge deal at one point in WWE. Well, at least amongst the fans. So he's gone, but Cain Velasquez, who's on a contract that I'm going to say probably at least 5 times more than what Zack Ryder's on, is kept. So you get rid of the wrestler, and you keep the grossly overpaid, quite frank, development talent that is Cain Velasquez. You keep Ronda Rousey, even though the the way she talks online, you would think she never wants to get in a wrestling ring again, because, and to be honest, none of the other women want her to get into the ring again after she said that she had fun in WWE getting to have fake fights with her friends. That was her exact words. So a lot of people, you know, are very pissed off about that. But again, you know, she's on 2-3 million a year just so she doesn't do anything else, as long as it's with the WWE. Brock Lesnar's money, I'm sorry, I don't get it. I don't get it. Brock Lesnar, right, I hate to say this, is not a draw. People respect Brock Lesnar, people know Brock Lesnar, but people are also sick of Brock Lesnar because he never shows up, and he's usually the champion, which means it's a belt that no one else is getting a chance to win, and Brock doesn't need it. I think he's a 9-time champion now, 8-time WWE champion. You include Universal belts, I guess that makes him a 10-time, 11-time world champion, I guess, in some regard. And then you've got to include the time he won that World Heavyweight title and the WWE title at the same time, I suppose. Yeah, he didn't need to hold it. If he didn't need to win it, and if he did win it, he didn't need to hold it for as long as he did. It just baffles me what goes on in WWE, their overall strategy. I mean, when was the last time we saw Eric Rowan on television? The partner of Luke Harper, now reinvented as Brody Lee in AEW. And might I say, even though we've had no crowds for him to react to, he's killing it. He is already established. He is very far from Luke Harper. And we're seeing that Luke Harper really was just a caged animal that wasn't allowed to talk. He had to know his place. And if he couldn't do what anyone wanted, he had to shut the hell up and just do as he's told. Got a minute push as the Intercontinental Champion for about a month. I would say Brody Lee is already a more credible threat and a guy taken seriously by his fans than Luke Harper ever was. I got on board with Brody when he won the Intercon. I was actually on board with him before that. I remember watching the Wyatt family, and I remember thinking, Bray Wyatt talks too much. Eric Rowan is very clumsy, but Luke Harper is the breakout star of this group. And that was kind of true. I mean, they kind of tried to work something when Randy Orton joined the Wyatt family. But let's face it, I mean, the breakout star, apart from Bray, from the Wyatt family, was Braun Strowman. And I think we all kind of know why that is. It's because he's 7 foot tall and he's jacked. You know, and as soon as you say 7 foot tall and jacked, people think WWE champion, or they just think WWE superstar. Braun Strowman fits the mold of WWE, or Vince McMahon to be more exact, perfectly. And that's why he was a breakout star. And Luke Harper couldn't do a southern accent, and that's why he was never given a true push. And you start to realize, when people say the company is ran by an out-of-touch old man, you start to realize that's not just a fun thing to say for fans. They're not just saying it because, oh, it's the fun thing to do, say that Vince is out of touch. You know, that makes us feel like that we're more in touch than the billionaire in the wrestling business. Maybe there's elements of that to some people, but when you look at things logically, and when you become a hardcore wrestling fan and you start to develop your own sense of how you would do it, who you would push, the public image you would want to set out for your company. Vince McMahon is in the 90s as far as I'm concerned. He was trying to remake the Attitude Era in the PG era. Like, everyone was talking about what we're going to call this era for WWE. It's called the PG era, and it fucking sucks. right? That's all this is. This is the PG era. It's nothing more. It's nothing less. It's not the John Cena era. It's not the John Cena never even had the ruthless aggression era, because it was the beginning of the PG era and the death of the Attitude era. So you just see on the tangent I've gone on. How can this company be so... How can that guy be so out of touch? How can he be so almost naive in the way he's been doing business? Like, the people... You run out of words. You really do. You really run out of words to describe Vince McMahon, because he really is unlike any other human. People who know him, tell him about how he's a freak. He's a workaholic as well. Oh, there's something on the line. They say how he's a workaholic, how the dude never sleeps, all of the above. Cool. Didn't really want that, but hey, I've got one. Sorry, I'm gonna lose track. Where was I? Vince McMahon, yeah, out of touch. At this point, really doesn't know what he's doing, and I can say that with the utmost confidence. I believe that if someone showed me how to be a booker, which again, I imagine it's probably not that difficult a concept, because professional wrestling is very much an American thing now, so everything's been dumbed way down. Sorry to any Americans listening out there, but you guys aren't that articulate, right? It's not difficult to catch on to an American system, no matter what it is, right? And I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. It is dumbed down. I'm used to things being a little bit more complicated, because Brits have a high tendency to keep their cards close to their chest, and very much do things in a complicated way so no one could copy it. Whereas the Americans, as I say, it's fairly easy to copy, to look at what they do and say, okay, we've just got to do this, but do this better, and not as simplistic. Sorry if you hate that, but this is what happens when you have a lot of time to just observe the world, not based on the news, not based on articles. This is what you get for looking at people and for seeing business strategies like the poor ones we're seeing in the WWE. I talked a little bit about one of the things being one of the bad things that WWE have a grasp on right now is public image. And you would think during the PG era that's something that they would want to have on lock. They have lists upon lists of words that their stars, execs, whatever, cannot use on social media. Even though less than 3 million people watch SmackDown and less than 2 million people now watch Raw. Where was I going with that? Yeah, their YouTube channel still has 50 million subs. So where are those other people? I know there's probably a lot of duplicate accounts, probably quite a few bot accounts. But even you subtract them, you're still probably talking like minimum the 30 million genuine people that are subscribed to the YouTube channel. And it's like, well, they don't watch the show. They can't stomach watching the show. And then they'll go, oh, but the YouTube ratings on this were very good. It's like, yes, but you guys aren't going to get paid anywhere near what your television stations are going to pay you for broadcasting your product. And particularly, everyone's more happy to watch YouTube clips of WWE because some of the matches are, believe it or not, quite good, because they do have good talent in the company. Most of the good talent goes underappreciated, and all the overrated talent are the ones that get the most money. But it's all based on perception at that point anyway. As in, it's not about what the crowd thinks about them that gives them the money. It's about what Vince thinks of you. And Vince will only pay you what he thinks you're worth. Oh, sorry, what he will know, quote unquote, you're worth. Like Roman Reigns, you watch his matches, right? There's very rarely a story. There isn't really any detail. There is only the big dog, spear, Superman punch, drive-by, couple of hard rights in between, Samoan drop maybe. Roman Reigns' match is incredibly predictable and incredibly boring. Roman Reigns' singles matches have been boring for at least 2 years. But the dude gets paid $5 million a year, which is more than Seth. And I don't really like Seth. I think he's a piece of shit. I think he believes his heart is in the right place, but what he doesn't realize is that even when he's being nice, he comes across as a dick. He's probably very nice to Becky, but he has to be nice to someone or he'll die lonely. So, I'm sure he can put on a nice guy act for one person, particularly if it was Becky Lynch. Wonderful, wonderful girl. She has a great heart, and I wouldn't say she was great looking. She's not really my type. I'm Scottish. I just never really found Irish girls that attractive. I find the accent quite off-putting, if I'm completely honest. I'm like that with Glaswegian girls as well. I think the accent is not for me. Like I couldn't put up with that voice every day. Oh man, that makes me sound so bad. Anyway, enough about someone who's actually worth the money she's getting paid. The fact that Roman Reigns gets more money than Seth Rollins does not make sense to me. Because you would think after everything, Rollins being handpicked by the Authority to betray the Shield, which was such a huge moment, to then go on win Money in the Bank. And I'm not going to lie to you, right? Seth Rollins was the last decent Money in the Bank holder we had. Braun Strowman was a joke. Brock Lesnar cashed in quickly. The last two times that a woman won Money in the Bank, I'm not sure if I'm right about this, this year was Bayley, last year was Alexa Bliss. Both of them cashed in on the night they won it. They both cashed in at Money in the Bank after winning the briefcases, obviously at Money in the Bank. So they just don't care enough about they just didn't care enough about the women's division to even bother having a story for the Money in the Bank holder or make them feel like a credible threat lurking in the back. The last person that was like that, as I said, was Seth Rollins. And Roman Reigns, because of the blandness of the character and the wrestling style, if Reigns was to win the Money in the Bank contract, well, I mean, if he didn't cash it in on the night he won it, I'd be shocked. But let's face it, Roman Reigns wouldn't hold that contract for, say, 6-7 months because no one wants to see him that much because he's not that good. Right? Like, Daniel Bryan is countlessly times better than Roman Reigns. And is Daniel Bryan on $5 million a year? Definitely not. Definitely not. And as I said, your celebrities who are coming in and making millions of a couple of appearances, like, that's only going to work with your fan base to a certain extent. You're going to piss off the wrestlers so much that the WWE and Vince will very quickly realize that they have the word wrestling in their logo. World Wrestling Entertainment. Before that, World Wrestling Federation. Wrestling. Yes, I know you've put entertainment at the end, but these guys are wrestlers. Okay? Right? And there's only so much bullshit they're going to take, right? Nia Jax, right? From when you hear her talk, you can tell that if you brought up the amount of money that Ronda Rousey makes over her, she would get incredibly pissed off. Because yeah, when you're at home, you're the fan, you say, oh, well, she's a celebrity, so no wonder her rate's so expensive. It's like, yeah, but they are still wrestling. I know they tried to say they're not wrestling, but they are wrestling, which is a sport, right? And the fact of the matter is, if you had... Here's actually a very good example. Usain Bolt, right? Usain Bolt could be worth millions. It is worth millions, you know, particularly from a media standpoint. He wanted to be a professional footballer, right? But was he signed up to clubs like Barcelona or Real Madrid or Chelsea, Man United, and paid more than the footballers there? No. Because he wasn't good enough. He wasn't seasoned. He wasn't proven. It didn't matter who he was. He still had to put in the work in order to get to that point, in order to get to the top of another sport. WWE is all about the image. If you are a celebrity, you will be pushed to the moon and you will be paid more than the guys and the girls that actually make WWE watchable to some extent. Watch what happens, right? WWE is going to turn into a company with no wrestlers, but only celebrities that either think they can wrestle or it's always been their dream to be a wrestler, because that's what WWE are. They're the company where dreams are made. Whether you're a fan or an employee, WWE makes your dreams because they are the WWE. You will forever say that you were at WWE. No one cares anymore. WWE is a dying brand because they're not wrestling anymore. Funnily enough, you will lose the wrestling fans if they watch the show and go, oh, you know what? This reminds me more of the Geordie Shore than it reminds me of pro wrestling. And this isn't now me going to go on the rant saying this is why AEW pulling in 3-4 million people that WWE lost. They are showing an indie product which a huge fan base like, but more of them won't like. So I'm not going to go on talking about AEW. But the fact that they have so little wrestling, they don't even acknowledge the wrestlers. They'll all go eventually. And what happened what happened on Wednesday is total proof of that. They've kept Ronda Rousey, even though she doesn't appear. They've kept Cain Velasquez, even though he got buried by Brock Lesnar at Saudi Arabia and has done nothing since. Because, like I said, he was totally green. Totally green. So he's going to have to train up for years in order to be a commodity. But he's getting paid millions every year. And whereas he stays, names like Zack Ryder, EC3, Drake Maverick, even Gallows and Anderson have been sacked. Like, do you not just look at that and think, if that's the mentality of WWE, they might be gone by the time Vince McMahon dies? Because at this point, it's almost self-sabotage. It's like he doesn't want anyone to inherit that company when he dies. I don't think he minded if someone took over the XFL and that be his legacy. But the way he conducts his business, like, does that not just... It just seems self-destructive. Totally self-destructive. Why the hell... And this should have been my tagline to the video. Why the hell would you keep Cain Velasquez but fire Zack Ryder? Why the hell would you do that? There's not a single fucking answer why. It's not about cuts. It's not about saving money. They don't need to save money. They're making money. The fact that they've gone back to live shows with everything else means they're going to be turning an absolute fortune, right? They're expected to make record profits because of everything that's going on. And people are getting fired. Not only does that sound like self-sabotage from a future perspective, but it just, that message you're sending out, right, is like, this isn't just like a group of people just getting fired. This is a group of people getting fired from a company that can afford to pay them easily. And not only that, look at the current times we're in. They've just fired these people in the middle of a global crisis. And so what? These people now have no main wage to cover expenses of their family. I hope all of these guys have money in reserves, because they're gonna fucking need them now. Because WWE have just put all these people's lives in danger, as far as I'm concerned. They've given them more shit to deal with that was unnecessary. And this is a company who, we're told, treats their own like family. And to quote Brian Alvarez, in this current crisis, if your family was living with you, and yeah, you know, it's expensive, but you're surviving, and you're surviving well, just because you want to go and buy a couple of extra video games on your PS4 does not mean you'll kick out one of your children. It doesn't mean you'll kick out your wife, you know, during this time just to save a bit of money. This whole thing, I know that sounds like an exaggeration, but WWE are always so heavy-handed on this family thing. Family this, family that, family this. It's the least... UFC feels more like a fucking family than the WWE. And that's an understatement of the year. And after all of this, Vince McMahon is announced as part of the main group that will be in charge of helping the American economy restabilize when this all blows over. The man who is unnecessarily firing people when he can afford to pay them, not a smaller company who's running on debt. We're talking on a company with 500 million minimum and also turning a monthly profit, is being put in charge of helping people. Just take that in for a moment. That isn't my opinion. I've just told you what's been going on. So don't take it as this is my embittered opinion. Just look at what I've told you and tell me what you think of that. That a man who is jeopardizing people's lives for pennies, unnecessary pennies that they don't need, is being put in charge of helping the American economy. Well, maybe not put in charge, but he's being made a crucial decision maker. And called by the president, the great Vince McMahon, a week before he does this. Before he axes half of his company. Because apparently WWE's 500 million is going to run out. It's mind-blowing. You know, it's absolutely fucking mind-blowing. And if the world was really a fair place, I would say it was criminal. I would say that it was unlawful dismissal. Because there's no need for WWE to make cuts. And as I keep saying, no one can pitch me an argument to tell me otherwise. Anyone that just thinks about it, not as a wrestling fan, think of it as a human being, cannot argue with that. So, to all the wrestlers, Sarah Logan, EC3, Drake Maverick, Gallows and Anderson, No Way Jose, Kurt Hawkins, Zack Ryder, many more, Deonna Purrazzo, too many. Heath Slater. There's just a lot. All these people my heart goes out to. All the writers. All the producers. What gets me... This is a small one as well. This takes the cake. Into WrestleMania, a lot of the stories were dropped because of talent not being able to make it and all of the reasons above. The only genuine story that was able to continue into WrestleMania was the story between Otis, Mandy, Dolph Ziggler, and Sonya Deville. and they followed through on it, and people loved it. I loved it because it was something they'd been building for months. Get this. The writer that came up with that executed that, was fired. So the writer that came up with the only good surviving story going in and coming out of WrestleMania has been fired. If that's not out of touch, I don't know what is. And as I was away to say before I gave you that example, producers, writers, backroom staff in the WWE headquarters, we're talking about total sackings up to about 100. Oh shit. We're talking about sackings of potentially up to 150 employees. And the number is said to get even bigger once they've combed through the NXT stuff. This is painful. This is going to ruin WWE's public image. And you know what? Good. Because the WWE have been getting away with too much crap. And they're blind, and they've got such a narrow-minded fan base that are always willing to protect them. You go on Twitter, you go on Facebook, you will see people still trying to defend WWE over this, comparing the WWE to like a restaurant. You know, oh, well, restaurants have to let go of people, so do WWE. No, they don't, dipshit. Starting to feel like a Scottish Jim Cornette at times. But yes, this has been a dark week for pro wrestling because it once again highlights the absolute bastard nature of the top company in pro wrestling who don't even represent pro wrestling and are ashamed of the concept. They are firing wrestlers. They are hiring celebrities for more money. And this is WWE. Wasteful World Entertainment. They might as well change it to that because there's certainly no fucking wrestling. Thank you. Enjoy. Take care. And if you have any self-respect, boycott the WWE.